Happy Saturday and welcome to this edition of the Leadoff on the Peak One Sports Network. I'm Ashton with Tony and Landen producing over there, getting you ready for your sports weekend. We're going to talk some NFL, some college football. If you stick around till a little bit later, we're going to talk about the Eagles, Bucks, Rams, and Bengals need to watch out on Monday Night Football next week. And we'll talk a little bit of baseball, but first, let's talk about what we've been talking about starting this show off recently is Friday Night Football, because we had another game last night.
Yeah, luckily we were not on the call, so we're a little fresher this morning than last week.
Yeah, getting home at midnight is not advantageous when you have to wake up early and do a show. Wake up early enough to show prep and do all that. But Ross and Dan, they did a good job last night. Unfortunately, the game itself wasn't very competitive, but they did a good job of entertaining everyone. We reached 500 subscribers, so it was a great turnout.
Yeah, it was. As you and I found out from last week, with not a lot of recent live game calling experience, calling a lopsided game is tough.
Yeah, because
they did, Ross and Dan did an outstanding job with that last night, because it's really tough to stay in a game when it's like that.
Yeah, talking about different strategies. I know because we called a lopsided game last week as well, and we kept saying, at what point are you thinking? I mean, you're never going to think as a coach or a team you're just out of this. Until it's late in the game and maybe you're worrying about next week's and keeping everybody safe or fresh or trying to get a good that good momentum going into next week. But at what point do you switch gears in your strategy from okay, we need to get a score and then a turnover or a stop and then an onside kick, where you're not doing all that as we all did with kids watching our favorite teams. Like, okay, if they just get a touchdown, onside kick, touchdown, 2-point conversion, onside, but no, it was a great broadcast. Thank everybody who watched and commented and participated in that.
Yeah.
It was a good turnout.
A great turnout. A lot of action on the live chat on YouTube. So,
speaking of 500 subscribers, we're over that now. So if you're watching this or listening, make sure to go and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. You can hit the like button as well and the notification button so you know every time we go live, whether it's this show, Friday Night Football, Bungalow Sports Show, or whatever. And this episode is brought to you by Betalytics. The NFL season is here. Don't bet with your gut. The Betalytics dashboards allow you to quickly identify the top-graded best bets and hottest trends. Betalytics uses AI machines to learn algorithms and create accurate game simulations, player prop projections, betting line evaluations, and best bet recommendations. Use promo code PEAK1 for 25% off when you sign up today. Go to betalytics.com to start betting smarter. And I thought it would be, obviously we're going to talk about college football today being Saturday. Before we get into the big matchups, I think it'd be cool to talk about this weird story, college football story that we kind of came across about Miami tight end Cam McCormick. This is a weird story. Right now he's petitioning the ACC for a 9th year of eligibility to play college football.
Yeah, he's like I told you earlier in the week, this kid's going to be looking to draw on his 401k from the NCAA soon as well.
Making a career out of it. Now, he hasn't...
That's a perfect point. With the NIL now, these guys really do have a career.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably is.
Even Dion, and we'll get to some of this later, even Dion said that, with the NIL, Shador has no reason, if he's not going to be the number one pick next year in the draft, he has no reason to enter the draft this year. He'll make more money in college this year than he will in the NFL next year.
Yeah.
So there's no motivation for him to leave this year if he's not going to be the number one guy, which we assume he won't behind Caleb Williams. It's probably the number one overall pick.
Yeah, and a lot of guys do. I mean, because Cam McCormick's a player who's not going to go to the NFL, and that's one reason going to petition just so he can continue his career in college. And I don't think he has any NIL deals. He might now because of this, if he is granted a 9th year of eligibility. But the 25-year-old 8th-year senior transferred to Miami this past offseason from Oregon. where he had been enrolled since
Yeah,
2016.
7 years at Oregon.
We'll just go down this because there is some injury involved. It's not like he's played every year. 2016, he was redshirted. 2017, he played a full season. 2018, he played one game before he broke his ankle, and then he missed the remainder of that season, the 2018 season, and then was sidelined for the 2019 and 2020 season because of complications with the injury. There's obviously 2020 was a shortened season with COVID. And he finally came back in 2021 and 2022, where he played limited, and then he petitioned the Pac-12 for the 8th year of eligibility, which they granted, and then he transferred to Miami. So right now, in his 8th year, playing for Miami, petitioning the AACC for that 9th year
for next season.
Yeah, and right now McCormick is tied with Northern Illinois linebacker Kyle Pugh for the longest active football tenure in FBS history. Nobody's ever played for 9 years, and Kyle Pugh actually just graduated in 2022, so that's a recent story as well. But
who have I seen? I thought I saw it this morning. There's like a 34-year-old kicker.
Oh, UCS, University of Colorado State kicker.
I think,
I mean, I think it was a situation, you see this a lot with guys that like go into the military or they do other things. Their clock hasn't started, and at Landen, you want to explain what the eligibility, like how that works with your eligibility?
It's your first full season of playing. So you can play your redshirt freshman year, but you only have
there's a certain amount of time that you can.
There's a certain amount of games that you can play.
They qualify you for a.
I forgot what NFL quarterback did it, but they weren't going to give him a redshirt freshman year, so he had to go and he intentionally hurt himself to get a medical redshirt.
That qualifying amount of quarters played, or
because they were trying to make him play or he was a redshirt freshman, but they were trying to make him play over the amount of time that you can
and then
play.
Once that starts, your clock starts.
Yeah, once you play your freshman year, it starts unless you have a medical redshirt. You can't redshirt after your freshman year.
So McCormick, this is probably a lot to do with that because I'm wondering what grounds he has to do this because a lot of his seasons you'll see he caught 4 passes. That doesn't mean he didn't play a lot of games, but he only caught a few passes, so he didn't play a lot. I think only 1 year he's played in all 13 games.
It says 8, but really it was a redshirt freshman year. He didn't play, doesn't count.
Yeah, he hasn't played for 8 years.
The second season was the only season that he's played a full season.
Yeah.
So he could. So if they're taking that one, that's a year of eligibility. The game that he played, they're probably taking that as a year.
In 2018, he played 1 game before getting hurt.
They're probably taking that as a year.
So 2018, 2019, 2020, he was injured all 3.
Yeah.
I think 2021, he played a lot more.
So
and then 2022 last year.
And then 22.
So you're saying it's 17, 21, 22, and then this year would be his 4th year in 23.
Yeah.
And he's applying for
a 5th
year
kind of
playing,
but
9th year of eligibility.
Yeah. I think they didn't give him a medical red shirt because it was complications with it. He didn't actively have the injury.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, he just wasn't able to play because of the 1 game he played in 2018. They may give him, since he just played the 1 game, and not very long. I know he had negative yards receiving in that game, so he probably only played a couple of plays anyways. But Oregon started enrolled in 2016. Right now in Miami. He was 25 years old, so we'll keep y'all updated with that story as we go along. But let's jump into some of the college football matchups. One of the bigger ones, it's not the top one, obviously, because you have Ohio State, Notre Dame playing today. It's probably the biggest matchup. But you have number 19 Colorado at number 10 Oregon, which is pretty big, just the Deion Sanders effect, Coach Prime, and did y'all stay up that late to watch the Colorado State game?
Yeah,
I was up to almost 2 a.m. watching that game.
Yeah,
probably not exactly how you wanted to go as Colorado. It was an exciting win. It was against your rival.
Would you have ever taken that bet that you would stay up till 2 a.m.
to watch
watching Colorado versus Colorado State?
With everybody, the college football world,
the entire country was watching that game.
the most streamed game ever, and I think the 5th most watched game, regular season game in college football history. Just a week ago, or a year ago, Colorado State were both bottom 10
Yeah,
schools.
I mean, how many? I know Colorado. It's pretty well known they only won one game last season. What was Colorado State? How many games did they?
Probably one. I don't know that they went winless, but I know I follow a social media page that shows you the bottom 25. Like they do, instead of the top 25, they do the bottom 25. And
both these
Colorado
teams
and
were in the
Colorado State were both
bottom
down there.
25.
Yeah, in FBS. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean that's still 110 teams or something. That's a lot. That's bad from
And
worst.
now you have
to,
Colorado ranked at what are they? 18? Yeah, 19.
They're 19.
19.
They're 21-point underdogs at Oregon. You have some injuries.
I think that's disrespectful from what we've seen. I mean, I know TCU's not the national championship team that they were a year ago, but
Nebraska's
they
a
were
quality
not a bad
team, too.
team. You know, I think it's a disservice to 21 points, man. That's a lot. I mean, that's for two ranked teams, two teams in the top 25, and you're saying the spread between them is going to be 21 points. I think that's a little ridiculous.
And of course, Colorado coming off that crazy overtime win. Like I said, that's one that most people probably expected to be a blowout. But Colorado State hung around. It was a real intense game. A lot of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. It was just one of those weird games that you had to keep watching, whether, if you just happened to stumble upon this game and watched it a little bit, if it wasn't the main game of the week, I think you would have stuck around and watched it just because it started. So how it started was so crazy.
Yeah.
Those first few drives in Colorado obviously got started off slow.
Well, I don't know if it was so much them getting started off slow as it was Colorado State came out and they proved they weren't going to be embarrassed on national television.
And they came out.
I'm sure that's the only national televised game they're going to have all season.
Yeah, and
I can't imagine there would be another.
And I don't know if it was their
Colorado
first
State.
drive, but it was going on to be the first points. And they kicked the field goal, made it. There was a penalty against Colorado. Colorado State said, "We'll take the points off the board," which you rarely ever do, unless it's like, okay, we're down like inside the 5-yard line or something.
Yeah.
So it went, because it was a long field goal too. So I think they were still at like the 30-yard line after the penalty. So I think, would that be weird if they, because you're thinking, okay, well, if we don't get it, we'll kick another field goal. And I was thinking that'd be weird if they just got a turnover, and they almost did that first one. They ruled, they overturned it, and then they had the pick six a couple of plays later. And that's just, I think that's showing the character of the team. I mean, character's a bad word because there were a lot of unsportsmanlike conducts against Colorado State, a lot of cheap hits, but just the fact that they stayed in the game on the road after that play. Like, it's one thing when you're just kind of playing, you shouldn't be in this game, just because the other team's so much better, but you shouldn't be in this game, and then you have something like that, just complete reversal. It was a 10-point swing. The crowd's crazy. It was a pick six. It was Deion Sanders' son. And then they just come back and they stay in the game. I thought it says a lot to that team.
Colorado used all week, right? And maybe they've used it all season, but it really came out last week of it's personal.
Yeah.
I think Colorado State took that more personal, being clowned on by Colorado, than Colorado took that personal.
Probably,
Deion's
even if it
done
was
a
kind of
great
on
job.
them, though.
Deion's doing a great job with this club, and I'm a huge supporter. I mean, I don't have Colorado buff stuff on the way or anything, but I'm like, as far as you can go without ordering some swag from them. But
Yeah. I thought about getting a Colorado hat or something.
Deion is definitely clowning on a lot of guys, but that's Deion. We knew that was Deion. And like we talked about last week, this is great for college football. It's making football fun again. And other than Colorado opponents, I don't think anybody's mad about this.
I think they're the haters, that when LeBron went to Miami, Golden State won a bunch of championships. There are always those people who just can't stand to see things like that happen, and they want to clown you for it. But I'll tell you something that was good, because Deion is such a huge personality and outspoken, and sometimes can come off as arrogant. I forget the Colorado State player, but I think it was in the first quarter. Maybe it was in the first half when there was that late hit. It was double penalty, pass interference, and then the dude, you said earlier he had a lacerated liver. Just hurt. And then Deion, because there were death threats coming out against this kid, and Deion said, "Leave the kid alone." He could have completely justified gone up on that podium and said that was a trash play. There's no room for that in college football, which everybody was already thinking. But he went out and said, "Hey, it was an intense situation. Don't get on the kid about it." It was these kids caught up, and I don't think the Colorado State coach was saying anything like mess with plays. Do hits like that, but it's on the coaches intensifying this game and pushing these players, which you're supposed to do, and sometimes it pushes them past that point where, hey, we have nothing to lose type situation.
I think that you saw that. That's how Colorado State came out that way.
Yeah,
they had nothing to lose. Everyone in the country expected them to lose that game. So why would they not come out with nothing to lose? Colorado had everything to lose. If Colorado loses that game, it changes the relevance that we're giving them this week.
And right now, nobody's saying anything negative about Colorado State.
Yeah.
Outside of maybe that play and how they handled themselves. But
on a more positive note,
yeah,
Blenders in this deal with Deion and these sunglasses, he gives them to his team. Then they go out. They have 4 different pre-sales going now, all the way through December now, completely sold out on pre-orders, $4.5 million.
See, over-under on Deion costumes for Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were thinking like Barbie is going to be the Halloween costume. I bet you see a few Deons just walking around with his sunglasses.
If you can get the sunglasses in time. The problem is the back orders, are so far out. And probably now the most popular sunglasses on the market for $68.
Yeah.
That's a great deal on a pair of sunglasses for, a high-end, especially a brand like Deion. But we've known Deion to help brands. He's always been a Nike guy, then at Jackson State. And I think even maybe through his Prime Prep Academy and what is the other? He had Truth.
Prime.
They were Under Armour.
Prime Prep was Under Armour. Jackson State was Under Armour.
He helped build Under Armour. Yes, Under Armour's a big name. He helped advance where they're at, but by being the name he is, especially coming from being a Nike guy for so long.
And going out and, kids like to put that, that apparel on and look, they want to look better, look cool on the field, and look like the professionals playing. And he did that at Prime Academy, had, I would say top-notch uniforms for a high school team. And Jackson State, they did a lot for them as well, and even Colorado State. I can't even, and maybe it's the relevance that Colorado hasn't had in a while, but I couldn't remember a different uniform that Colorado has worn. They're normal, and they're sitting there. They've worn white helmets in one game. They've worn all black in another game.
Mix the black with the white and gold and.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just mostly a Prime thing or Deion Sanders coming there. But and that's kind of a big thing now for everyone to do it. But how Oregon has their deal with Nike and 500 different uniform combinations. I think Deion's getting that.
Do we know what Colorado's wearing today against Oregon?
No clue.
Are they going to bring?
Or what Oregon's are going to? There's going to be some weird. It could be all over for all yellow, all green, all gold, all black, all white. I don't know. That's something I'm going to be watching mainly just for the uniform.
Did you see the chameleon cleats that Oregon has?
The heat activated.
Yeah, they're heat activated, and they change colors based on the heat.
I haven't seen
the cleats. Yeah, that's.
So you can tell how fast they're running.
So they've gone so far as to using colors that they have to use color changing now on the field. When's it going to go to a point where they're going to have like color changing numbers or uniforms like?
They're just going to have one uniform, and there'll be an app, and they'll change what uniforms they want to wear. And they'll do like the fan-controlled football league, and they'll go before they'll show the players like, what should we wear today? boom, boom, boom in this show, and then everybody will vote on it or whatever.
Yeah.
That's going to be. It's actually not a bad idea anyway. It's like just let your fans vote for what you're going to wear. That's pretty cool. Also, we have some pretty good matchups this week. We're finally getting good slates of games on this college football weekend. Number 15, Ole Miss versus number 13, Alabama. Bama is 7-point favorites after that ugly 17-3 win over South Florida. You think Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, old assistant to Saban, you think Bama pulls this one out? Or like you said last week, is Bama done?
Yeah, I think
Bama
Ole Miss
over?
wins.
I think Ole Miss wins.
I like Ole Miss in this game as well. I think we're seeing the downslide of the Saban era. I think the NIL has really changed, and you've even seen him upset about that and the landscape of college football because of that. And he knows he can't compete with the money side of college football.
Or he was competing already, but now they say we can make that money and go anywhere we want and play for someone who we want to play for.
Yeah.
Alabama,
I mean,
to me, seems
like
pretty
Colorado.
boring.
I mean, Colorado. Who doesn't want to go play for Dion if you can make money and get to do that, and you know he's going to help advance you? You know, the same with Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin's a very similar coach that guys want to go play for. You know, a younger, fun. Yeah, that's where college football's heading. And Nick Saban is, you know, there's that saying that evolve or die.
Yeah.
I think Nick Saban may be beyond that point, and I don't think he's a guy that's going to evolve too much.
I think you're still going to land the top prospects like you were going to anyway, because I think at that point when you're expected to go to the NFL and you're only in high school, that you're going to make better decisions. You're not going to necessarily you're going to make a bunch of money NIL-wise anywhere. But it's a lot of those mid-tier guys or guys who are looked at as mid-tier, or they come out and they're like Shedeur Sanders. Nobody thought of him as a Heisman candidate at all coming. Like, yeah, he's a good quarterback, probably a little, coming from Jackson State. He's probably not going to do very well here, but he's a Colorado. Maybe he'll, be a top 5 quarterback in the Pac-12. And now he just comes out.
He's a top 5 quarterback in the country.
Yeah, and you don't. It's players like that who aren't, he went to follow his father, obviously, but players on that, they're good players and they come out and they become superstars. They're going to make decisions like, hey, Alabama, I don't want to wear that boring uniform. I go to Oregon, Colorado, follow Dion, or, I get to do, school looked on as cool. I don't care about, winning necessarily as much or being the number one team.
Who do we get to play? What conference do I get to play at? And how does that change with conference realignments now, where all these teams now are going to the SEC. You have teams leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12.
Or traditionally where Big 12's an offensive conference, and maybe your receiver offensive players say, hey, I'm going to look better. My stat line's going to look better playing in the Big 12 rather than playing defenses in the SEC.
Yeah.
Now, long term, you're thinking that's not necessarily a good strategy. You want to play those better defenses, but an 18-year-old kid, it's like, man, I just want to get to the NFL. I'll worry about all that after the fact. I want to play against easier defenses, Well, obviously, you're talking your top prospects. Don't necessarily think that way, but outside of your top 20 players in college football, that's not who necessarily wins you the championship. It's what better all-around roster you have.
No, we're seeing that with Colorado. We're going to use them as an example just because they've been put on the map, and I think they surprised us all with how good they were going to play. They're not necessarily stacked with the deepest, best talent, Yeah. They didn't recruit the best talent, In turn, the Texas A&M, the best recruiting class this year, probably the worst, I don't know if you've had a better recruiting class and had worse results with those expectations in college football. In the history of college football.
Texas, maybe. Not this year, but Texas in general always has. It was right up there with A&M.
At that point, it's
Top
a coaching
5
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coaching, who's also making a ton of money.
I don't know how Texas A&M can get out of that. It's some stupid
lot
millions,
of money.
and for the next 8 years, you You're not even a point
Like
to buy out.
To buy out is like
Jimbo Fisher's
$90 million or
right
something.
now. Yeah, and I think you knock off. I can't remember if I'm talking about like $48 million a year. Or
We
something.
saw
I
those
don't know.
controversial comments last year with the fans saying we should, pay a hitman or whatever. At some point, boosters get frustrated and they're like, "Hey, look, I'm just going to donate. Yeah, we're going to finance it." Because boosters pretty rare. I mean, you saw SMU; they get accepted to the ACC, and I think it's something stupid like $500 million has been donated by boosters or raised or whatever you want to call it since that announcement.
Yeah.
So boosters will run everything. We already know that, and now that
and especially with Texas moving to the SEC,
you have that
puts
competition again.
it puts a lot of pressure on Texas A&M now
Yeah,
to not be the little brother to Texas.
and that was the same with when TCU. I mean, because they've been rivals to Texas forever, the Southwest Conference, and then they were in the Conference USA and Mountain West. TCU Texas had a target on them from TCU saying, "Hey, we're going to take them down." They don't care about Baylor. They've been playing Baylor. They want to take Texas down. They've been successful for that for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Doing that just because we're playing them every year. Obviously we're in state. It's a rivalry anyway, but playing them every year, it's one thing to say, "Hey, Texas is doing better. Texas A&M is doing better." But when you're playing them and losing to them head to head, that is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
Because A&M, you can say Alabama's your rival, whatever's your rival, which is true, but that's a short-lived rivalry. People don't care near as much. You lose to Alabama, man, that sucks.
What type of revenue would you? I mean, you're looking at an insane amount of revenue increase when you put Texas A&M and Texas playing each other again Thanksgiving week, right?
I hope it's on Thanksgiving night again.
Is that not the most watched? I mean, I think that would trump an NFL Thanksgiving Day game.
When both teams are successful, for sure. I mean, because you saw Texas and Alabama. I mean, Texas, that I don't know if they're back or not, but that highly anticipated game against Alabama, which looks to be on the other way, but both undefeated at the time, both top-ranked
So many
teams.
people think that game was a 10-point swing the other way for Alabama.
Yeah.
And Texas pulls it out by 10, which obviously not surprising to Texas fans, but I think everyone else in the country thought, damn, Alabama's can't.
It surprised Texas fans, too. Just like Cowboys fans, Texas fans, I'm a Texas fan, arrogant enough. Like, you'll talk crap as a Cowboys fan, too, but then the game starts, you're like, man, I don't feel good about this. Like, I don't feel good about this Cardinals game, even though it should be a 20-point
like
win.
We're talking about with Ole Miss. I mean, in most cases, you're like, yes, it's Alabama. They're never out of a game. I just don't know that this is their year.
It's because it's in your head. Mm-hmm. And so many times they've been on top so long. There's times where I'm just like Landen, like, I just don't think this is. They start off slow. They get not that Texas was an ugly loss, but they get a loss. They struggle a couple more games, and then they're right in the thick of it, the SEC. And then all of a sudden you're like, you're worried about Georgia and this. All of a sudden Alabama wins an SEC championship, and you're like, well, we have to put them in the playoff. We can't. I think if Alabama can win an SEC championship just because of how the draw they have, I think the NCAA puts them in the college. If they're anywhere near the top, like if they lose to Ole Miss by 30 and they drop down in the 20s, maybe not. But I think they can be the first two-loss team to be in a playoff just because they're Alabama and they have that draw right now.
Yeah.
It was almost like they didn't want to put TCU in last year because they had to because they were undefeated.
And that's part of it. It's about the money, and the NCAA knows that.
It's all about
you're gonna put the teams in. That's the exact reason they're going to expand it. What do they expand it to 12 teams? Mm-hmm. The reason they're going to expand that is because that's just more money, more revenue.
Number 22 UCLA, number 11 Utah. If anybody wants to talk about that, nobody. I didn't think so. And then the big one, number 6 Ohio State travels to South Bend to take on number 9 Notre Dame. Notre Dame's kind of that team where they're back.
Traditionally, that's always a great game.
Yeah. And
another rivalry that just.
And Notre Dame usually plays these big games early in the season. And more recently, because I can think they played Texas and then they lose, and then you realize Notre Dame wasn't all that good to begin with. But this is a big game for them if they can take down Ohio State. I think they're propelled to the college football playoff. Outside, of course, they'll play USC later on, but they didn't. I haven't looked at their schedule. I don't think they have any other big matchups outside of USC, of course. But if they can compete in this game, I think it's between Ohio State and USC. If they can win one of those games and lose the other close, they'll be in the playoff if they win out.
Yeah.
To me, anyways, that Notre Dame's one of those teams that you want to put in if you can because they have a big draw as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, historically, they have a big draw. They're not that high-flying, like, fun team to watch always, but I think we'd all like to see them be. You want to see it shaken up. I mean, you see all these SEC teams in it year after year, the Georgias, the Alabamas, you've seen in recent years, the Clemsons. I think college football fans are ready to see other teams have a shot, which I think that we give them crap about the 12 team, next season, postseason. I think that's going to be fun for college football to give other teams an opportunity. It's one game and you can knock off. Anybody can win.
It's not necessarily the Cinderella story, because everyone likes the Cinderella story in theory, but you don't want to see. It's a bad example, but Duke and Butler, because that was a good game when they played the national championship. But you don't want to see that matchup.
No.
Like, you want to see a team get to the Sweet 16 in college basketball, and that's great. That's a good story. But you want Kansas, North Carolina, Kentucky, Duke, name your other major college basketball. The same thing in football. So what happens when TCU makes it? Although TCU is a major program, but when they weren't looked at as, national championship contention, Max Duggan was a great quarterback, but not to the level of Stinson necessarily.
Yeah.
And you get it, but I think the Michigan, Georgia championship would have probably been a lot
USC's.
better. USC's. That's what you want to see. Now with the 12-team playoff, I think that helps. Yeah, you get those teams in there, and then they'll probably lose anyways. But you'll get the teams that, when they lose one game, you're like, man, they're out of it.
Yeah.
Or they lose that second game, even though it's a close game, because the SEC.
It gives your USC's, maybe your Utahs, those teams, those top 10 teams that really can have a shot and give you a good championship game, still have an opportunity.
Or really good teams, really big juggernaut teams that have a really hard schedule. They're going to play 2 or 3 top 10 teams on their schedule when it's all said and done. And just because they lose 2 close games necessarily, they still get in the tournament.
So does that? Is it going to help you to? It's going to help the viewers. They're going to schedule better games now, knowing that they can lose 1 or 2 games and probably still have a shot at the playoff.
Yeah, probably. You're going to get the people that are going to watch their team no matter what. But yeah, if just Texas, for example, they go undefeated late into the season and they lose a late game and it's close, and you're like, well, that's
top
it.
12
Yeah,
team. Then
that's it. And then you still have the championship game. Yeah, this year if they lose that late, I just think that when you say an early loss is better than a late loss, regardless of the matchup, I think that's kind of cheating the game.
I do too.
Just because Alabama lost to Texas early on,
most likely. I mean, that's going to be eliminated now.
For the most part, if you're a good team, like if you're supposed to be a championship team or in contention, and you start off
top 10 teams in the NFL. I mean, in the NCAA, FBS, like any of those top 10 teams, they have a right to a shot at the national championship in most years.
Yeah, and outside of Alabama struggling last week, but let's say they lose in overtime to Texas, and then they go on and they go to the SEC they make the SEC championship game and they lose in overtime. Like, oh, they can't. They're not going to be in the playoff more than likely. And but a 12 team, they're for sure in there. They'll get in there one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, if you make it to the SEC championship, the Big 12 championship, you should be a playoff team. If you make it to that game shouldn't decide you making the playoffs.
Outside of your random like Missouri or something, because you're in a weak division and you have that 8-3 or 8-4 team make it, and then they play undefeated Georgia or whatever. But yeah, you're gonna have teams where How many times LSU, Alabama, Georgia, the top, they're all ranked in the top 10, but one of them is going to get left out of the SEC championship game one way or the other.
Yeah.
And usually that turns out beneficial because they don't have to lose that week. They for sure are going to stay where they're at, and then the loser, they'll jump ahead of them.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be better. You're never going to get rid of the people who want to say the same with the BCS. Like that number 3 team, if we would have just been ranked 2, and now because you're hearing it with top 4, that 5th ranked team that doesn't make it to the college football playoff, they had a chance. And I think
I think
still
at
hear
12, it's hard to argue that anymore. Like you had with just all you have to do is get in the top 12. You had plenty of opportunities through a season to get there. Top 5, getting in, or your top 4 now, trying to get to that point, that's tough. I mean, you could win all your games out, and it come down to some bull crap like your, strength of schedule and who you played and what conference you're in, and there's so many variables there. That's like, man, there's only
throw in undefeated UCF, although they're in the Big 12 now, but undefeated Coastal Carolina. Why not just throw an out large bid at them and just be finished with it? Because it's in the, I guess it'd be the quarterfinals, if that's what they're going to call it. Just let them get beat up by Alabama, shut everybody up, or they can make a run and prove their point. Because in the BCS era, there was a couple of years where an undefeated team was left out of the championship, But at a certain point, I can tell you, if you want to say your team's a championship contending team, undefeated, you got a shot. One loss, I'll even give it to you. I'm like, anybody can lose one game. We've seen that. But when you're at 2 losses, if you're not making the top 12 at 2 losses,
unless you're losing twice to top 10 teams,
but then you're still gonna make it in there. I think to not make it in there, with 2 losses to not be in the top 12, because if you go back in the year and look at the top, there are 2 and 3 loss teams in the top 12. You would have to be like in some podunk conference. You're not a Power 5 conference, which unless you just scheduled some really good non-conference teams, you're probably shouldn't lose 2 games and still be contending.
Yeah. Outside
of maybe the Mountain West, when they had like Utah, TCU, Boise State, all those teams were like top 15 teams or something. And then the same thing, your preseason ranking was so far off, it took you a while to get in the top, which then again, if you're not playing a good enough schedule, then it's hard to argue that you're going to be, like, if you have 1 or 2 losses, or if you have a 2-loss schedule. Like if you go undefeated, like, hey, I just played my schedule, what are you going to do? But you did lose.
Going to 12 teams definitely takes out the human factor there, where you have people basically voting on your destiny.
Yeah.
With just to get yourself into the top 12, the schools are going to have, the teams are going to have a big opportunity. They're going to play a big part in their own destiny. You got to go out and win.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have those juggernauts back in the semifinals and then the final game, because Cinderella stories in basketball are a little bit different. Football, you can get away with it one game, but then it's not going to happen again. Usually not going to happen again. You're going to have to really be talented to play, and I think it'll weed out those games. And I think college football, they've kind of been hard on or stubborn on fighting expansion, but now they realize is like, hey, that Final Four, we want it to be a real Final Four. If some are in it, if a TCU or something like that, Coastal Carolina, whoever, I say TCU like Coastal Carolina, they're in the Big 12, they're a major conference, a big team, but if they're able to get a couple of wins in the playoff and make it to the semifinals, okay, you deserve to be there. They're going to get that media attention, and it's going to be a big moneymaker for them anyways.
Yeah.
Let's jump into a little bit NFL, because we've had some big injuries recently. Nick Chubb with a gruesome injury on Monday Night Football. It was so bad that ABC refused to show the replay, or a direct replay of it. You had to go to YouTube or Facebook, and there were plenty of shots of it.
I saw it on TikTok, and it's all over.
Multiple torn ligaments, long road to
gruesome.
recovery.
But something I forgot about is when he was at Georgia.
Same thing happened.
Yeah.
The same thing on the same knee on an out-of-bounds play when he planted and the leg buckled.
That's just a freak thing. I mean, you can't look at that video and be like, man, he's injury prone.
No.
Anybody, and I might have died if that happened to my leg.
He planted in the grass and somebody hit him. I mean, your cleat stuck in. What do you?
And that's the good thing you say grass, because a lot of people are saying when are the owners going to start protecting these players? Like, I get it. I'm kind of on that side too, but Nick Chubb injury that had nothing to do. First of all, look at how he was hit. Yeah. It had nothing to do, and they were playing on grass anyway.
I think what you would have to look into in that fact with the grass versus turf is the non-contact injuries.
Yeah,
which we do see a lot of. You know,
and there is a discussion for that.
One that really sticks in my head is the Odell Beckham.
Yeah, there's.
I mean, he's running a crossing route and just his knee goes out. Like,
there's no reason that world-class athletes like that should be playing on turf like that.
There's arguments too.
These guys train their bodies to be able to run on turf.
There's no reason for it. You can't. The turf moves with you. So if you're going to plant, the turf is going to move with your foot, and that wraps your foot up. That's where all the knee injuries are coming.
Yeah,
it's the turf is wrapping their foot and it's twisting the knee. That's
owners. The NFL and the owners paid, I guess, a third party agency to do like investigations, and they say there's not more injuries due to turf, and it was pretty. It wasn't very specific. It's like, well, we're talking knee injuries, calf strains, like what specific injuries are we talking about? Non-contact injuries, because that's what it seems to. But they say, athletes nowadays are just you're so strong and so fast that the body can't keep up like that. You're moving too fast. And I'm like, oh, I think your body has a good way of knowing. You're not going beyond your limits necessarily doing that, because you don't see the non-contact on grass usually at all.
You have people that are. Not many people do what NFL players do. Like, the amount of force that they put into the ground. You can go up to any turf field. You can grab, like, just a handful of the turf and pull it up, and the layers come up.
Yeah.
With the grass, it gives you something to plant into, and you have the whole earth to put your force into.
Yeah.
With the turf, it's like playing on carpet.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see players like Micah Parsons came out and said, I don't care. I'll play on concrete if you want. And then Dak said, yeah, he's young. He'll learn.
Yeah.
But speaking of the Cowboys, Trayvon Diggs, he had tore his ACL during practice, and that was on grass too on the Cowboys practice field. I think it wouldn't – I haven't seen a video on it. If there is a video, it's not necessarily gruesome, but it's just the fact that it was during practice. Like, that's got to hurt you. You weren't doing it during the game, in the middle of a good play. It was just during practice.
Yeah, so you have to imagine that was probably a non-contact.
Well, we don't know if something happened during the game, too. I mean, guys always...
Yeah.
Most of the injuries that happen at practice are stuff that happened at the game and you didn't catch it, you don't feel it. Like,
yeah, because as I imagine, you're pretty beat up after a game anyways. Like, hey, I'm sore. That's just part of it. I'm 34. I wake up, get out of bed. I'm sore. I don't think anything. That's just normal for me. And you're right. If you do a slight tear or just in general, I'm sure your ligaments and muscles are weaker after that, and they're more prone to injury.
Yeah. I mean, you can tear your ACL sleeping. If your blanket wraps your leg wrong, you tear your ACL. So
I definitely could tear my ACL sleeping. That's not. But Cowboys looks like they'll be all right. I mean, you have Stephon Gilmore, Deron Bland, Jordan Lewis.
I was about to say Deron Bland will probably come in to fill that spot.
If the Cowboys had to lose a player for the rest of the year, that might be the best position to do it at. They're pretty deep. Yeah. They're pretty deep there, and we'll see. They have it seems like a couple of easy games before they play San Francisco in Week 5.
The Cowboys, looking at their injury list for this season currently, a lot of lower body injuries.
Interesting.
Hamstrings, knees,
calling foul on something,
ankles.
Trying to start a conspiracy theory.
I mean, they have 3 guys on the IR with knee injuries.
They do play on turf, and they played their first game on a game with turf for Aaron Rodgers. And speaking of Aaron Rodgers, that turns out I teased it at the beginning with the Eagle who plays Eagles, Bucks, Rams, and Bengals all play Monday night this week. Did Aaron Rodgers go down?
Yeah, the
First
last,
week Monday night.
the last
down
the,
on
Chubb.
Monday night.
the last 3 Monday Night Football games, and this is going back to last season.
Yeah.
The last Monday Night Football game of last season was the Bills-Bengals game with DeMar Hamlin that got canceled. And then you had Aaron Rodgers, the first Monday Night Football game, Nick Chubb.
And then what was the? I know it was a doubleheader last week.
Yeah. And I think there's an
Raiders,
injury in
maybe?
both of the games.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we're talking about
um,
instead of Madden curse, we're talking about
Monday
Monday
Night
Night
Football
Football.
it
curse.
was it was Raiders, Broncos, and it was a receiver was going to the ground, and one of the Broncos defensive backs just like took his head off.
Yeah, we may need to look out on Monday Night Football. I may watch it just because, just to see if there's any crazy injuries, because there's injuries, every game. But season-ending injuries to key players.
I think Bryce Young's out this week
Let's see,
too.
Eagles, Bucks. Both of those are grass fields. I don't know who's home, who's away. And Rams, Bengals. I think
Rams turf, Bengals.
I think that would be in LA, because if it's the second game,
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's usually on the West Coast. Yeah, Rams is definitely turf. I think Bengals is grass. Bucks and Eagles are grass fields. So we'll see on those.
And talking about the turf and grass, I mean, how would they? I'm in agreement that it should probably be grass. I truly do believe that we see more non-contact lower body injuries on turf. But feasibility-wise, how do you do that with all of the retractable roof domed stadiums? In Arizona, they have the field that they can.
They do it in Vegas as well,
Vegas
Allegiant
as well,
Stadium.
that they can roll it out. But teams that don't have that, Cowboys for one, you have Lions, Atlanta.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Like without
suspect
that,
you'd be able to
you're
do
not gonna
anything
be
with a
able to.
retractable field. Because first of all, you have to have a field. I know Cowboy Stadium, that's impossible. There's stuff around the stadium.
Yeah.
You can't put another 100-yard field out anywhere. I don't know how that works. If you set up I mean, my wife has UV lights she has on plants. I don't know if you set those lights up when they're not playing the game and have UV lights on the grass. I have no idea how that would work. That doesn't seem to come up as an issue when they say it would cost $12 million to switch everything to grass. That's not grass right now. So I assume that it's plausible and it'll work because
$12 million, that's not an issue.
no, that's nothing.
For them to say, it would cost $12
The
million. isn't
NFL or the
problem.
owners don't come out and say, well, this is impossible because
No,
we're in Dome Stadium.
What's the number of the lost revenue for non-NFL games?
Concerts,
College football games.
But
Because
think
we
about the contracts that you're paying when they get hurt. You
That's-
still pay their contract.
That's not, well, if it's guaranteed. They have certain guaranteed, like it's a career-ending injury or whatever. It's just whatever's guaranteed, which that number is getting higher and higher. I don't think the contracts are that big a deal to most owners. It's the contracts are against the cap. Like it limits them there, but I mean,
But
the payroll for the
today's
Cowboys to
game, is
Jerry
that even
Jones
a
is
problem?
nothing.
In today's game, do they care about that?
No,
Especially
well,
someone like Jerry Jones.
it depends on the owner's status
they've
and how much
touted
they.
AT&T Stadium as everything except NFL football.
Yeah,
It's what high school games can we host, what college games can we host, what concerts, what events, motocross, bull riding,
soccer,
UFC fights, boxing matches. Like
basketball games.
there are more other events there than the Cowboys.
Most events. I mean, you're talking about 8 Cowboys games. There's more high school football played there.
I mean, we're acting
And
like Jerry
Cowboys-
Jones can't go build something else though. Like if they made it to where it was grass, Jerry Jones would go build another arena and have a multi-purposeful arena that he did everything for.
I
Which
just
is
haven't
what
seen an
most
owner
NFL
say
stadiums are now.
this isn't possible because I have a dome. So that's why I'm thinking there's a way to do it, one way or the other. I don't
Or
know
they
what that
just know
way
it's
is.
so ridiculous that they don't even have
They
to
don't know.
address it.
They pay
They know this is so ridiculous that it's
they
not
pay
gonna happen.
agencies to do these studies, like the cigarette companies paid to do studies like this. No, they're fine. There's not any. I don't care what you see. There's not any more injuries on
the
turf.
the CTE stuff. Oh no, these guys, we're
Yeah, they're doing
We're
upper
doing-
body injuries and head injuries.
So, is there another lawsuit later down the road, just like the CTE
turf.
stuff for turf injuries? Because we see Aaron Rodgers, Nick Chubb's, not that Nick Chubb was on turf, but we see those in the news. Other, third string players, preseason, whatever, who barely make the team, who may be in the NFL for 3 or 4 years, that's it. That's their entire career. We don't hear about those because those aren't big name players. You're just like, oh, that guy tore his ACL. Nobody really thinks about that. If you look at the study about how many players have had those injuries and they've never been able to come back one way or the other, that they weren't that good in the first place, where, hey, I'm just trying to get my paycheck and now it's costing me money because I can't come back and make a comeback after sitting out for an entire year. Yeah. And then do we see a movie with Will Smith and
well, we're talking about
Netflix
lower body
documentary.
injuries, but I mean, you think of like the quarterback gets sacked and his face mask goes into the grass. It digs into the grass, makes an indent. But with turf, it can't do that. With turf,
sure.
if your head gets thrown on the ground, you saw it with Tua last year. Chris Olave had a concussion last year. Your head hits the ground, it bounces up,
it's
and
almost
it hits again.
It's almost like concrete.
Yeah.
We're talking about Micah Parsons said he playing concrete because that was like the original AstroTurf.
Mm-hmm.
Was basically like carpet over concrete, like a thin layer of carpet.
I mean,
your
you
head's
have,
getting
the excuse me. You have like the infill now in those, whether it's a coconut fiber, a sand,
the
a
rubber tire, whatever.
Yeah. In essence, your head is getting bounced off the ground.
At least twice.
At least twice.
There's no absorption.
And your body's like, your whole body is taking such a, like the ground kind of like, when you think you fall on like the grass, you trip and fall on the grass, it's gonna hurt a lot less than if you were to trip and fall on like basically concrete, something that's not gonna catch you.
I think it would be a good study to do. I don't know if most of the NFL has been turf fields for long enough, but look at the average career span of players in general, because like now it's not very long. It's like 1 or 2 years anyways, just because all the players that come in and come out so quickly. But thinking that over the long term, not just with concussions, but just hitting your body and your body taking that toll, if it shortens careers, like players like Tom Brady or whatever, you could even see him deteriorating a little bit, but he was just such a great football mind that he was able to use his team more and put talent around him. But I think it'd be interesting to see if careers are getting shorter now.
Interesting also is we don't really talk about guys in college being injury prone or seeing a lot of gruesome bad injuries. Of course,
they play
playing on the
grass.
NFL, you're playing on a bigger stage. Most college football games are on grass.
Unless they play like a big game at AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, a random game.
Your playoff games are going to be
your
on
day in and day
turf.
out though. You're playing a lot of grass fields. In college.
Practice fields are definitely correct.
I don't know off the top of my head any college fields that are turf. Ohio State,
unless they're playing at I think Ohio State is.
Yeah, like if they're playing at SoFi Stadium, AT&T Stadium.
But if they're playing like at their college, I think Ohio State's the only one off the top of my head that I know is
Memphis, because Memphis plays in a dome.
Georgia plays at.
Yeah, Georgia. Memphis plays in a dome, right?
Georgia's isn't turf. Georgia's is grass.
Georgia's grass.
Yeah.
Well, they play at the Falcons Stadium a lot too, right?
Yeah, that and the what is it? Not the Mercedes. It's the Sports Bet whatever arena. Anyways, Superdome, New Orleans Superdome. I mean, they play bowl games there. All that's I think a lot of the high profile bowl games will be played on turf, especially like Cotton Bowl.
Especially that time of year though.
But
too.
Kyle Field grass. Texas is grass.
Alabama.
Baylor's grass.
Which is interesting because I think.
Grass or is it turf now in the new?
Oh no, I think the new Baylor is.
Because it's more cost efficient to get turf now, right? Because you don't have the maintenance on it. Like it's a big paycheck up front, but you don't have the maintenance. So that's good to the college because college is obviously NCAA is all about
you're
money
seeing
as
a lot
well.
in high school. A lot of.
Yeah, but with
turf.
that, it's because high schools can't afford to constantly maintain a good field of grass, and it's easier for them to practice during the summer.
High school's a little different though too because less worrisome because most high school athletes aren't
Yeah, nobody's-
moving fast enough
Yeah,
to
you're not
really
planting
make
hard
that
enough
difference.
to-
You're not. There are a lot of players that do, but they're not getting pushed the same as when you go to college. And
Yeah.
you're getting pushed differently, and you're already a superior athlete if you're going to college. We need to talk about Major League Baseball. This is the last week of the regular season. I think is it in this week or next Saturday? We might be able to.
So
But right now, Dodgers, Braves, Orioles, Brewers, Twins, and Rays have all punched their ticket to the postseason.
And make sure to check out our website for those daily
Standings,
standings.
the updated standings on all those teams.
That's something we don't mention enough. Is we really push on all our social media and YouTube. We don't push our website enough.
Peak1sportsnetwork.com.
Yeah,
there's a
there's a
link
lot
in
of-
description of
a lot of great content there. Links to obviously this show live. We have a live button. Links to our Friday Night Football. So just a little plug there. Just check there out. We have a ton of content there as well.
The American League Orioles and Rays are basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's official. Those are the only two teams that can win that division, but they have a big lead.
Yeah, Orioles and Rays have clinched.
They've clinched spots, but for
Yeah.
the division.
Yeah.
The Twins have clinched the Central. Rangers, Astros, and Mariners are fighting for the West. Rangers are in
Rangers-
first place.
Rangers won last week. So that's what's weird is Rangers are in first place for the division, but in the power rankings, Astros have a higher power ranking than them.
Astros have had a better.
Astros are 5 in the power rankings. Rangers are 10.
They've had a better last few weeks because the Astros are 4 or 5 games back, not maybe a month ago. So they've definitely had a better run. But Astros lose last night. Mariners beat Rangers beat the Mariners. So Rangers are first place. Astros and Mariners are tied for second. Mariners might still be back half game. And then in the National League, the Braves clinched the East. The Dodgers clinched the West. And right now, the Brewers have the lead in the Central. Haven't clinched. They've clinched a spot in the playoffs, but not clinched the division. But they're up by 8 games. So, and then Ronald Acuna Jr., first ever player with 40 home runs, 60 stolen bases. First 40. He's actually the first ever 40-40 or 40-50 guy. 5th ever 40-40. But he's obviously the first ever 40-60 guy.
He's also hitting 337 on the year too.
Oh yeah, he's wrapped
Only
up
person
that.
above him is Luis Arias, still 354.
Yeah, Acuna is wrapped up the
Yeah.
NL MVP.
He'll definitely win the MVP.
It's interesting now. AL is more. I still think Ohtani is going to get it.
I don't think
But
so.
You don't think so? Well, I think it's now up more for debate than the NL. I think NL's cut and dry.
Yeah.
Braves best record, best player. That's now the Angel. Like obviously, Ohtani has been hurt. He hasn't been playing.
Still has the highest.
He's still highest in a lot of places, but
Yeah.
I think because the Angels aren't competing, they're not in the postseason. I think you play like Corey Seager's just having a ridiculous year. He'd probably be closer to favorite MVP if he wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Ohtani still has the 4th highest home run rate,
Yeah.
and he hasn't played in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I mean,
He
he's been
hadn't
injured
pitched.
for a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's been hitting.
But the Rangers are in contention, so Corey Seager goes up there.
Yeah.
I don't even know what Aaron Judge's stats are. Yankees have been so irrelevant. I think the Red Sox are in last place now, but Yankees are out. I don't know officially out eliminated yet, but they're pretty much out of it to make a playoff run. And I know Aaron Judge has been hurt part of the year too. That goes into it. But yeah, we'll be talking baseball playoffs next week, I assume. We'll be closer. We'll have a lot more clinched teams because there's only like 8 or 9 games left.
Yeah.
But guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Leadoff. We did get started a little bit late. Thanks for preparing with us. Be sure to follow us on social media platforms. Go to our website, peak1sportsnetwork.com, and catch another game this Friday night. Texas High School football, Friday night football on the Peak 1 Sports Network. Dan and Ross have the call for you. Saginaw versus Brewer.
Have a great weekend, guys.
See you later.